Hi guys, I'm Danae Brazil and today we are getting into our driver ratings for the Japanese Grand Prix, which wasn't the most interesting of races, and yet again I'm finding it very difficult to rate the drivers this season because so much of the action and all the things to do with the cars are not in their control, so I'm finding ratings very difficult. But I will say this week was certainly easier than last time out in China to rate, so I guess that is a positive. So I'll start with Aston Martin and Fernando Alonso, who I'm giving a 6 for this weekend. First of all, congrats to him for finally getting to finish a race in the Aston Martin. I'm sure that was a huge positive for the team and for everyone at Honda, considering this is obviously their home race. But yeah, can't give him much higher because obviously the car, there's such limitations, like it's not great, He came 18th, so he, wasn't dead last, which is nice, but aside from that, he's done better than his teammate and he's finished the race, which is, a good weekend for Aston Martin right now, which is unfortunate, but yeah. I'd say Fernando's done probably the best he could, but I cannot give it higher than a 6 just because of what he has underneath him. Then we have Lance Stroll, who I'm going to give a 5 because that's kind of the blanket rating I give when, it's so difficult to rate certain drivers, especially towards the back of the field, and because the reason that they're there is just because of, again, the cars they have. But obviously he did not finish the race. There was a mechanical problem, I'm assuming, as is with Aston Martin. But yeah, again, it's so hard to rate these drivers towards the back, especially because they just are not having a good time with the cars and there's not a whole lot that they can do. So it's a 5 for Lance Stroll. Next up we have Cadillac. We'll start with Valtteri Bottas, who I'm giving a 4.5. Now, I would just give him a straight 5 because, again, he's very limited by the car. However, he was so far off of Sergio Perez's pace that I have to take away half a point. To be that far off your teammate is ridiculous. Like, even if the car is this bad, I don't know if he had different problems I'm not aware of or what, but he was so slow in comparison to Perez all weekend, really. He was not at all on Sergio's pace, and so for that reason, it has to be a 4.5 for Valtteri. Now, speaking of Sergio Perez, I'm giving him a 5. It, again, wasn't too bad from Sergio. Obviously, very limited by the car, so there's not much higher I can give him. I think he did okay considering, yeah, there's not a whole lot to say about any of these drivers right now, so it's a 5 for Sergio Perez. Next up we have Williams, who had a fucking nightmare once again. We'll start with Carlos Sainz, so I'm going to give a 5.5 out of 10. Again, really hard to rate Carlos because of the state of the Williams car. However, 16th to 15th is not the worst. I do think he did a decent qualifying. I'm tempted almost to give him a 6, but I don't know if that's too generous. I guess you'll know because I'll decide in editing whether I go for a 5.5 or a 6. But either way, he did okay, I think, with what he had. Qualifying was, I think, decent considering the state of things, but overall it's not great. Next up we have Alex Albon, who I'm giving a 4.5 because mainly this is because of qualifying, because in the race the team essentially just, they hit him 6 times, so they started using the race as more testing. So race pace is not something I can really give a lot of commentary on. However, in qualifying, he was, despite, he's only 1 position behind his teammate did make it into Q2. So that means there was a chance of something, and also Carlos still put in really good laps in Q1, so I do think Alex probably could have got a little more out of the car, but I'm not entirely sure. But so for that reason, I'm going to give him a 4.5, although I may up it to a 5 if I decide to raise Carlos's grade. If I think both of these are too harsh, I might just bet they both go up half a point. Next up we have Alpine, and we will start with Franco Colapinto, who I'm giving a 3 out of 10 for this weekend. Last week was such a good showing from Franco, and I think this was quite a disappointing showing from him in Japan. However, this was just not a good weekend for Franco at all. Firstly, the incident with Behrman, while I do think it is mostly a fault of the regulations and the very dangerous difference in the closing speeds, there is also the fact that he still did drift to the left while he was slowing and harvesting the battery, which is dangerous. And I do not know why he didn't just stay to the right, and that forced Ollie to take avoiding action and caused a massive incident. So Franco is partially to blame for that. And then also, he was so far off Gasly's pace all weekend, it's like they were driving completely different cars, because his teammate is up in 7th in qualifying and Franco's down 15th. That is a joke of a difference. This is like Red Bull's second driver of the previous few years type of difference in qualifying. I don't even know what I mean to say about that. And then again in the race, his pace wasn't good. Gasly was up in the points and Franco is in 16th. It's just not a good race from Franco at all. So for that reason, giving him a 3 out of 10. Next up we have Pierre Gasly. I'm giving an 8 for the Japanese Grand Prix. Again, just like in China, a really great showing from Pierre Gasly. Just, best of the rest in Japan, which I think is very well done. He kept Max at bay for majority of the race, which I think was very well done. Difficult to tell if the Alpine is a good car and Franco is just really bad at driving it, or if Pierre is out driving the car, because that I do find that interesting, especially in defending against the Red Bull and against Max, is whether it's just because the car is genuinely faster, or if Pierre, he was having a better race overall. Next up we have Nico Hülkenberg, who I'm giving a 6 out of 10. A pretty anonymous race for both of the Audis, honestly. He's getting a 6 because he, actually, I'm going to give this a 5.5. I was about to say he out-qualified Gabby. No, he didn't. He did get closer to the points than Gabby in the race. He came 11th, which is not too bad, I think, considering the Audi just didn't seem great around Suzuka. But yes, very anonymous weekend for Nico, so it's, a 5.5, I think. And Gabriel Bortoleto, I'm also giving a 5.5 because while he did do worse than Nico in the race, I do think his qualifying was very good. To be up in 9th is a really good lap from Gabby, so for that reason, I'm going to give him a 5.5 as well, because I do think the Audis are pretty on par with each other this week, just in different sessions. Okay, so next up we have the Racing Bulls, and I'm going to start with Liam Lawson, who once again put together a really good, solid race. I'm giving him an 8 out of 10. The second week in a row that he's just put together a really good race, stayed out of trouble, which I think was his big issue last season, was getting into incidents with people. So the fact that he's kept it tidy, hasn't done anything stupid, just driven really well, taken home some points, I think is very well done. Yeah, I think he just did really well. Obviously, he did benefit from the safety car, but that's just part of racing. I'm not going to really take that into account when I'm rating, so it's an 8 for Liam. Then we have Arvid Lindblad, who I'm giving a 5.5 out of 10 for the Japanese Grand Prix. I mean, Arvid both had bad luck during this weekend, but also I just think was not really on the pace. Obviously, that final quali lap from him was really good to knock Max out of Q2, but aside from that, it wasn't great from Arvid. A pretty average race. Didn't seem like he was super comfortable at any point. Then there was also some of his manoeuvres with Hadjar, which I thought were pretty on the limit of being legal. I do think there's a little bit of moving under braking happening, so for that reason it's going to be a 5.5. Next up we have Haas. I'm going to start with Esteban Ocon. I'm giving a 7. He got it into the points, got a point for the team, which I think is very good. Qualifying wasn't too bad. I think 12th for the Haas is not a bad weekend to qualify. And then, yeah, again, finishing 10th. Nothing stupid from him. Tries to get in the mix a bit as well, which was good. So, yeah, a pretty decent race, I think. So, it's a 7. Next up, we have Ollie Behrman, who I have put down in my, table, my notes, to not give him a racing, so I do think he's had a pretty nightmare weekend of things that were not his fault. However, I do think he was making quite good moves in the race, so I think I will give him a... Oh, see, it's so hard to rate though, because in qualifying, he qualified 18th, which is poor. However, we now know that there was issues with the software in the car, so he had no control over that at all. And then in the race, again, the reason he DNF'd is not his fault. That is mainly a regulation fault, which we've all been kind of waiting to happen, and also partially Colapinto's fault. So, makes it very difficult. However, when he was on track, he was making good moves and making up some places. So I really don't know if I can rate this or not, because we'll see how I feel editing this. Then, if there's a number on screen, it means I've come up with a rating. But right now, as I'm filming this, I don't think I can rate Ollie Behrman for this weekend. Next up, we have Red Bull, and we're going to start with Isaac Hadjar, who I am giving... I was really harsh when I wrote this down. I think I'm going to give him a 6, actually. He qualified 8th ahead of Max, which obviously was a big deal. I will say, though, that, and we'll talk about this more when I get to Max, is that he had a different aero package. Red Bull attempted to bring upgrades to Suzuka, however, they clearly were not very good and did not improve the car at all. So Max with the upgraded car did not really be helped at all. We'll talk about this when I get to Max anyway. Let's get back to Isaac. But yeah, he still did out-qualify his teammate. And then in the race, I think he got a bit unlucky with the safety car. And then he was fighting a lot of people, I will say. He was giving it a good shot. I just think the pace is bad. I think he tried his best to get something out of it. So for that reason, I will give Isaac a 6. Next up, we have Max Verstappen, who I'm giving a 7 for the Japanese Grand Prix. I think Max kind of did the best he could with what he had. I would have liked to have seen him pass Gasly, but I just don't think the Red Bull had the pace, especially with the supposed upgrades that Red Bull brought to Max's car for this weekend. They clearly have not worked. The stability of the car was awful. He complained about having issues with the steering. So I just think it was about surviving the Grand Prix more than anything. He still takes home some points, which I think is a positive for the weekend. But yeah, aside from that, it hasn't been great. It's very clear that it's been a difficult weekend, and it's raising a lot of questions, I think, about Max's future in general. So I'm very interested to see where that will go. Next up, we have McLaren, who we can actually talk about this week because they started the race. So we're going to start with Oscar Piastri, who I'm giving a 10 out of 10. Oscar drove phenomenally. I think 3rd in qualifying is the best he could do, right behind the Mercedes. And then getting up into 2nd in the race, leading several laps at the beginning. It was a very good race from Oscar. I don't know if without the safety car he would have won, but I think it would have been close, and I was very interested to see if he would have been able to fight off either both or at least one of the Mercedes. But either way, it was really well driven from Oscar all weekend. I'm so glad to see him back on the podium and to see him both start and finish a race this season. So yeah, it's a 10 out of 10 for Oscar. A phenomenal drive from him. I actually do think probably one of his best. It's just he got unlucky with the safety car. Next up, we have Lando Norris, who I'm giving an 8 out of 10 to Lando. This was, I think, a really good, solid drive from him. I think he attempted some decent moves in there. Obviously not as good as his teammate, but I think, yeah, he did a pretty good job with what he had. Being in amongst the Ferraris, I think, is a kind of where I expect the McLaren to be. I think Oscar overperformed in that sense, to be ahead of both Ferraris. So I think for Lando to be in between them is certainly nothing bad. I think it's a good haul of points for him, and overall a very good weekend, so I'm giving him an 8. Next up we have Ferrari, and we're going to start with Lewis Hamilton, who I'm giving a 7 out of 10. I think Lewis should have been better this weekend overall. I think that he just didn't seem like as comfortable as Charles or as he has seemed in the previous 2 races. I don't know what was going on there. Like, felt like he just couldn't really defend it all. I don't know. There's something just not. Didn't seem like Lewis was clicking with the car as much as he has been the last 2 Grand Prix. And so it was just a pretty average race from Lewis. I think he should have probably beaten Lando, but he, for whatever reason, just couldn't hold that position. Again, it's not a bad race. I'm even tempted to maybe give a 7.5. Maybe I'm being harsh with this, but I don't know. I just felt like Lewis was really having a tough go of it. So it's a 7. Then we have Charles Leclerc, who I'm giving a 9 out of 10, because I think to get on the podium this weekend was very good from Charles. The Ferrari in practice and qualifying seemed really on edge, so I think for him to qualify in 4th was a good job. Even though I do think he maybe could have beat Oscar, it was so close. I'm not going to really take points away for that. And then I think you put on a really good race. Again, some good overtakes from him. And yeah, again, another really solid drive from Charles Leclerc. I think he's just consistently super solid, which is what I expect to see from him. And yeah, this is just another weekend where he shows that. And then finally, we have Mercedes. We're going to start with Kimi Antonelli, who I am giving a 9 out of 10. Now, despite the fact that obviously he got pole position, he won the race, I do not think this was as good of a drive from Kimi as China. Obviously the race start being the big thing, he at least did admit that it was fully driver error, but to have dropped from 1st to 6th on the opening corners is just not something he can be repeating, certainly, and I do think that was a very poor showing. And then he also obviously did benefit from the safety car. I do think that without it he would have been able to challenge Oscar for the win, but I don't think it would have been as easy, and I don't know if he would have been able to build such a big gap. Now, in saying this, I will say that during the race after the safety car, I do think firstly he did a great job of the restart, really caught I think a few of the cars behind him by surprise when he started going again. And then also I think that his pace in clear air was phenomenal. Now, how much of that is just the Mercedes being really good and how much is just Kimi being really good, we'll never truly know. But I do think it was a very good showing from Kimi Antonelli this weekend. I think to win his first 2 races back-to-back has certainly scared George Russell a little bit, and so I'm very interested to see how that will play out. And then finally we have George Russell, who I'm giving a 7 out of 10 for the Japanese Grand Prix. I think George has some real reasons to be concerned going into the rest of the season. Firstly, because of Kimi obviously now being championship leader, but also because I do think that once again, George Russell's wheel-to-wheel is coming into question quite a bit because of Charles Leclerc. He is really struggling, I think, with both Ferraris, but especially against Charles, to attack all that much and defend positions. He's really, I think, being shown up, and I don't think it looks very good, especially considering all of his talk coming into this season and in general. And I do think having a weekend once again where he is stuck fighting the Ferraris for so long and giving Kimi all of this time to get away is a little ridiculous. The fact that he's not even on the podium, and when I think realistically he should have been on the podium, I also think he probably should have had time to go and attack Oscar, even though obviously George got very unlucky with the safety car, so did Oscar, and so I think he should have been able to at least go and attempt to catch him for second. And yeah, more importantly, for me, the reason it's only a 7 for George is the wheel-to-wheel with the Ferraris. I don't know why it takes him so long, why it seems so difficult for him, and the fact that he couldn't get past Charles Leclerc after all of that, I think is a point of concern. So yeah, that is my driver ratings for the Japanese Grand Prix. I feel like I went through those really quickly, I don't know. Obviously now we have a very long break due to obvious reasons, so we don't have any races in the month of April, at least not for F1, obviously for other things. Obviously there will not be driver ratings for a month either. I do plan on probably making at least one video in the month of April. I was hoping I would be making my Joachim Trier filmography video. However, I cannot find anywhere to watch Oslo August 31st. So if someone has a way for me to watch that, please let me know, because I need to watch that, firstly just for me, so I can say I finally completed his Oslo trilogy, but also because I would love to make that video. But I'm sure I'll find something otherwise to talk about in the month of April. But yeah, other than that, there'll be no F1 to talk about for a month. But yeah, if you liked this video, please hit the like button, and if you would like to see even more from me, please hit subscribe. And if you would like to see even more from me, you can follow me on Instagram, TikTok, Letterboxd, all those things are linked down below. That's where you can find me talking about movies more, and also all of my makeup and special effects work. And yeah, that is driver ratings for the Japanese Grand Prix. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.